Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. My name is Daniel McAdams, and I'll be your host today. Dr. Paul is traveling today. So today we are going to talk about something that is in the news and the forefront of everyone's mind today, and that is the budget battle on Capitol Hill. To break it down, we have my old friend Norm Singleton, my old colleague. We worked together in Dr. Paul's office on Capitol Hill for, I think, a good 12 years. Norm is still up there, still haunting the Hill from Campaign for Liberty. Norm, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Daniel. It's brings back a lot of, I don't want to say pleasant memories. Being with you and Dr. Paul and the rest of the staff was always pleasant, but these weeks of scrambling last-minute negotiations were always unpleasant. The only thing that I think we had it easier than a lot of other so-called fiscal conservatives is that the leadership knew to leave us alone and not bother saying, well, if we do this, that, and the other thing, will you think your boss vote for it?
And we knew that the end vote was always a no, so it didn't matter how they tried to sweeten the pie for Dr. Paul.
Yeah.
So if you could, Norm, you've been following this very closely. Could you kind of break down how did we get to where we are today? And where are we today? We're expecting a vote on the budget. Just give us a little bit more of a background, if you can.
Well, what happened was, you remember in 2011, there was a debt ceiling showdown, and it ended up with, in order to get the vote of the majority of Republican in Congress, Boehner and Obama made this deal where there'd be that super committee, and if they couldn't come up with a plan to reduce the deficit, which of course they didn't, there was sequestration. Sequestration has resulted in less than 1% cuts in the projected rate of the federal budget. Not even, most of these aren't even real cuts, but even that's been too much for the bipartisan spending caucus, big spending caucus. So there's been an effort to cut some kind of deal for over a year now to say, let's increase spending and let's let the Democrats have all the welfare spending they want, as long as they'll give the Republican hawks all the warfare spending they want. And that's basically what this deal is going to do. It's also because we're running up against the debt ceiling limit. And of course, anytime you have someone who continually maxes out on their credit cards, what any smart bank is going to do is say, well, we can't let you default on your debt. And we certainly can't expect you to live within your means. So we're going to suspend the credit limit for 2 years for you, so you can keep paying the minimum balance and you can keep racking up debt, right? That's what my credit card company would do for me, and I'm sure that they would do the same thing for you. So that's what this bill does for Congress.
It sounds like those offers you get in the mail. Transfer your balance, no additional fees. Don't pay any interest for 2 years.
Right. Just send me your bank account number, and I'll wire you $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
So that was part of it, and then the politics of it are interesting. The reason this is all being jammed together too is that John Boehner is retiring from Congress. He's stepping down from Speaker, I guess, next week, and he wants to clear the decks for Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan's role in this is somewhat convoluted, because while he says he hasn't been involved in the negotiations, as budget chairman, he was involved in the last time there was a deal to kick to increase spending over these so-called sequestration caps. It even had it's even commonly referred to as the Patty Murray budget, Ryan's then counterpart as chair of Budget Committee in the Senate. But there's been some speculation that Ryan may have been at least cheering Boehner on the sidelines. As chairman of the Budget Committee, it's very odd to have him not at least blessing the deal before it moves forward. And for a while, he was playing this game of saying, well, I'm not really for it, and I don't like the process, but now he's come out in favor of it. And Boehner has been quite open about wanting to get all this done because he doesn't want the new speaker to have to deal with all these problems. So he's doing a favor for Paul Ryan. And of course, if you look at Paul Ryan's record on spending, it's not nearly as good as his reputation is. He voted for all the bad stuff during the Bush years. He is a huge war hawk, and like all war hawks, his answer to when the Pentagon and the lobbyists for Lockheed and Boeing come knocking at his door and say, we need this many trillions of dollars, is to say, are you crazy? I'm going to give you an additional $5 trillion because we need to keep America safe.
Well, you know, in this deal, and we both read an excellent article this morning by David Stockman that I think broke it down very well. And I don't know if we have a graphic here, but it's very interesting that this deal that we talk about would be an increase in spending over the next 3 years of $85 billion. And then, as they usually do, they kick the can down the road, and cuts don't even start kicking in until 2020. And those are tiny ones, and then way down the road, you're supposed to get these big cuts. But as Stockman makes the point that this is assuming that the economic recovery in the U.S. will last, by the time they really start to kick in, will have lasted 123 months. He goes back in history and says there's never been an economic recovery in the U.S. to last 123 months. So this sounds like a real fantasy, doesn't it?
It does, especially when whether or not we're in a recovery now is debatable. If you look at the real statistics on unemployment and inflation, which of course are very different than the government statistics, and also whether or not you trust future Congress to abide by those cuts or find a reason to kick the can down the road. I mean, we've seen this in Medicare, the doc fix, so-called, that remember in 1998 they put in a formula that was supposed to reduce physicians' payments, and then every year physicians would flood congressional office with phone calls and emails, and Congress would postpone it. And then finally, earlier this year, they just threw up their hands and said, we're just getting rid of it, and we're going to put in a bunch more future cuts. And it kind of is, this always reminds me of, Daniel, I know you remember this, and I hope nobody out there is too young to remember Popeye and Popeye's friend Wimpy, who was always saying, I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. You know, it's the same thing. We'll gladly cut spending in 5 years if you let us increase it by a couple billion today. It's wimpy budgeting. And
if I was just going to say, if I was a Republican voter and I had this crazy idea in my head that the Republicans were fiscal conservatives, first I need my head examined. But this budget will be passed on the strength of the Democrats in the House. And as I understand, they only need, 40 or 50 Republicans, and they're struggling to get that. Is that not right, Norm?
It will. We're trying at Campaign for Liberty to stop this. We have a petition up at campaignforliberty.org that I hope people will go to and sign. And we're looking forward to actually a bigger fight in the Senate and seeing if we can maybe force the Senate to give some real cuts. One senator has already said he's going to filibuster it. I forget his name, but I think actually he might have the same last name as our boss. I think he's from Kentucky, and he's not Mitch McConnell. Oh, you're right. This is another game too that is going on. Is Boehner's last act will be to violate the rule that only legislation that has a majority of Republican support will be put on the floor. And honestly, as you and I both saw during the Bush years, that rule is actually not one that favors our side, because a lot of times what it is the establishment Republicans, they'll get their way, or they'll twist and beat up enough conservatives to vote to get them to vote their way. But in this case, because there's a lot of Republicans who are afraid to vote for this because they know it'll make their voters angry, we see that this being just tossed to the wind. Mm-hmm. And you will also have, I think, a surprisingly large number of Republicans from the Armed Services Committee and the Defense Appropriations Committee, or maybe not surprisingly to viewers of this program, voting for it because they've been working behind the scenes to try to get a defense bill. Lindsey Graham has even said that he would be willing to violate his no new taxes pledge if it meant that he would get Obama to sign a much bigger defense budget.
He's just trying to keep us safe, Norm.
Right.
We're going to have to cut it a little bit short, Norm, but I can't let you go without asking you about this House Speaker race. Now, it's pretty much expected that Paul Ryan is going to take over the House. I know you and I had another preference for House Speaker, looking outside the Hill for the new Speaker, but I don't know that that's going to happen. Maybe something will happen. But with Paul Ryan now, we know that he, as you said, he played a pretty curious game with this budget, pretending that he was against it, I hadn't seen it and everything, and then this morning magically coming out for it. Is Paul Ryan as Speaker, in the words of Pete Townsend, just meet the new boss, same as the old boss?
I do agree with that. I think that he is, if you look at his record, his voting record is not nearly as fiscally conservative as his reputation is. Again, he voted for No Child Left Behind, Medicare Part D, all the war spending, everything that true fiscal conservatives and certainly libertarians objected to during the Bush presidency. As chairman of the Budget Committee, his bills or his budgets have been largely smoke and mirrors, and he's mastered the art of wimpy budgeting, of saying that we'll cut spending in 10 years. And more importantly, as Daniel, you understand spending time up there, he's basically asking for no effective challenge. He's making a bunch of promises to open up the system, but he's saying, but you have to change the rule that says that I can be removed as Speaker. You have to promise not to go to the media. And we always hear Boehner, Pelosi, Hastert, Newt, everybody who takes the Speaker's chair on their first day, they say, we're going to open up the process. I'm not going to use the Rules Committee to shut out amendments. And then within a month or two later, they've broken that promise. So I don't really hold much hope in Speaker Ryan actually changing things or moving us in a more limited government, pro-liberty direction.
So it's kind of like Boehner without the tears, Norm, I guess. We're going to have to close it out, Norm, but thank you so much for joining us, breaking this thing down for us, giving us a little bit of your great wisdom and experience up there on Capitol Hill, and I hope we'll get together soon and talk again.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank everybody out there for tuning into the Liberty Report today. Please come back and see us soon. YouTube.com/Ron Paul Liberty Report. Subscribe.